Hello everybody! I'm Clarity, and for this video, I'm talking about Yuri on Ice, which is an original anime with no manga for me to compare it to! No excuses now. I don't think I have to explain it, but for those unaware, Yuri on Ice is about a figure skater named Yuri who struggles with anxiety and self-esteem issues. After failing miserably in competition, Yuri is caught on camera doing a routine originally performed by his idol, Victor, which motivates Victor himself to go be Yuri's coach and try to turn Yuri's life around. On Yuri's way to the top, he comes across characters like Edgy Mick totally not going to steal Yuri's victory, Invasive Triplets because the character designers need to sleep at some point, Condiment Hair, Innuendo Man, and many, many, many more. And some gay happens, I guess. Oh boy. Alright, let's just get right into it. Yuri on Ice as a concept is not bad. It's just an unfortunate execution with a lot of problems. Okay, maybe that's a little bad then. First off, the exposition. Because Yuri on Ice throws its audience right into the action, specifically Yuri losing a competition, everything has to stop in place as we get Chibi Yuri explaining what happened. Or Chibi anybody, really, depending on the episode. This causes episodes to grind to a halt when it would have been just as easy to have Yuri think about things instead. Particularly strange was the episode that felt the need to come up with the excuse of, oh, Yuri's parents don't even know how figure skating works. We better teach them. Like, guys, we know you're doing this for your audience. You don't have to be coy about it. It's even weirder in episode 10, where Victor is the one narrating. The big thing here is that the show prioritizes telling us about characters and talking about what's going on, instead of just letting the scenes play out through visual storytelling. The second thing here is the characters, because there are so many characters. Most of the figure skaters in particular have their own backstories and their own mini-conflicts going on with their skating routines. While this makes them less like filler characters, it takes away from the characters who actually need the focus. Every time a character skates, it takes precious minutes out of episodes. Precious minutes that could have been spent developing the characters who matter. And, I mean, obviously it's a figure skating anime, but because there are so many characters with so many performances, the budget feels stretched thin. I'm looking for quality over quantity here. If I'm gonna see Yuri skate to the same two pieces of music multiple times, I'd much rather he, along with the other core characters, get beautiful, fluid animation that holds my interest. And, speaking of core characters, Yurio. Oh, Yurio. With so many edges that it might as well be illegal for him to be near balloons, Yurio is just a mess. I don't mind aggressive characters if they're done well, but more often than not, they're characters with serious anger issues who take it out on all the wrong people for the sake of, I don't know, comedy? Yurio in particular is much younger than Yuri, is extremely talented, has a metric frick ton of fangirls, gets to yell at basically whoever he wants, and even gets away with it all in the end because he apparently might maybe care for Yuri deep down. Like, there's this one scene that takes place after Yuri messes up one of his routines because Victor wasn't there. Yurio comes out of nowhere, kicking Yuri, and enters the scene just to whine about the fact that Yuri at least had an excuse for messing up, whereas Yurio beat his own personal best but still isn't satisfied because he didn't beat one of their competitors, JJ. But that's apparently okay by the show, because Yurio gives Yuri some food that his grandfather made. Though part of me wonders if that was only because his initial reaction to eating them himself didn't make him seem too pleased with the taste. I just don't understand. Yurio even has the same name as Yuri until a character suggests that they call him Yurio because it's going to get confusing otherwise. It just seems like one big unnecessary way to pit these characters against each other. They have the same name, but they're basically total opposites. I get it. And I really despise Yurio's behavior. This idea that a character can be as aggressive as they want as long as they do something nice 5% of the time. Without that aggression, a good chunk of the comedy is gone, so the show has to compensate by sprinkling in these so-called touching moments in hopes that the whiplash causes their viewers to feel more than they normally would. Yurio is still mocking Yuri all the way into the final episode, so I would hardly call him developed or redeemed. Heck, Yurio doesn't even do well getting supported! Yurio glares and gets angry at Yuri and Victor cheering him on, but then gets frustrated by Yuri messing up his routine, almost cheering him on before being cut off by JJ mocking him for it. As JJ should, honestly. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this scene was supposed to make me dislike JJ or something, but no! I was happy because someone was calling Yurio out for how his character just cannot decide what to do with itself. He wants to be an eternally angry edgelord with a semblance of heart somewhere, Or, in anime terms, an inevitable fan favorite. But I can't get behind a character who's clearly set up to carry a lot of the comedy until it's time to make the audience feel something. Yurio needs a therapist, not a ballet coach. Even episode 10 makes a big deal about the fact that no one's ever asked Yurio to be friends with him before. A true mystery that will never be solved. Yet Yurio gets irritated at Yuri and Victor when they try to support him. The show tries to give him some sort of arc about unconditional love, but he wins the competition by being angry! He makes a big deal out of Yuri wanting to get the gold and promptly quit when that is Yuri's decision, and thus none of Yurio's business. But no. Now Yurio has to get all up in a fuss even though Victor honestly didn't even give him an absolute on whether Yuri was actually quitting or not. I imagine it's supposed to seem like some sort of big character moment for him, like, oh, he angrily suggested that Yuri quit back in episode 1, but now he wants Yuri to stay, wow. But it's crazy to me that he tells Yuri to do something, treats Yuri like trash, and insults Yuri both to his face and behind his back, but when Yuri eventually does the thing that Yurio told him to do, Yurio's just like, This isn't even limited to Yurio either, because Victor is equally as baffling as a character. He agrees to be Yuri's coach until the Grand Prix final, then gets upset when Yuri decides to retire after that fact, calling him selfish for it. When Yuri calls him out on that, Victor apparently just assumed that Yuri would need him longer, or even that he just expected Yuri to decide on his own that he wanted Victor's help longer. This is laughable considering that Victor is the one who flung himself into Yuri's life without Yuri's consent or permission. The most Victor has there is the time that Yuri was intoxicated and obviously not right in the head, but asked Victor to be his coach if he won a dance contest. Victor even falls into the same category as Yurio, where his role in the comedic aspects of the show seriously hurt him as a character. He's designed like he's this perfect character, but he's impulsive, arrogant, hogs the spotlight, is inconsiderate of others' feelings, and is so irresponsible that he's honestly the last guy Yuri needs for his coach, only being moderately successful because...
Well, the power of love is really powerful.
I'm hungry and this is boring. Can we go get hot pot now?
The third point I want to talk about is the pacing, and really, how scenes are set up in general. Scenes that should be given a lot of time often aren't, whereas the other scenes that should be quick get stretched out or get played way too late. Let's take Yurio as an example. During episode 1, it's made clear that Yurio frightens Yuri by his gaze alone. Yet, later, after being kicked and stepped on, Yuri suddenly becomes totally casual and almost a bit smug with Yurio. It's such a drastic change, like when Yurio acts like he's entitled to stay in one of the rooms in the resort run by Yuri's family, and Yuri just shrugs and hardly reacts to Yurio shouting. Also, at some point, presumably while he and Yuri were training, Yurio finds a good friend in Yuko, but their relationship basically comes out of nowhere and there's no development there. Like, is it this look that's supposed to hint at some sort of closeness? Yuko is the one to help Yuri with his training, but we never see their actual interactions. It's a shame too, because Yuko seems to be a generally nice person despite her tiny demon children, and I felt like she would have gone a long way to help Yurio redirect his aggression. That's what I thought they'd be aiming for. I don't need Yurio to stop being aggressive. I don't even know if anyone would have wanted that. I just wanted him to be aggressive to the right people. But instead, his character shimmies between rage mode, happy to see his grandfather, and then apparently finding his unconditional love because Yuri and Victor say so? And on that last thing, it felt like they suddenly made Victor and Yuri act like Yurio's gay dads, but that in no way was built up. It just suddenly happens. And speaking of Yuri and Victor, there's a plot all the way at the end, that I'd mentioned earlier, where Yuri finally decides to retire, which Yuri stresses on a few occasions. It's particularly weird when Yuri thinks to himself that he'll quit, and the very next scene is Yuri asking Victor to be his coach until he retires, as if that's some sort of big deal. He might as well have just said, "Hey Victor, can you be my coach for like 3 more episodes?" How, romantic? Anyway, not only could that conflict be resolved by a simple discussion over how invested Victor seemed in skating during episode 11, but it just doesn't fit as a conflict for the final episode, especially after Victor established in episode 10, only 2 episodes ago, that he hoped Yuri would never retire if it meant that Victor would always be Yuri's coach. I just don't understand how Yuri could decide to make this decision on his own when Victor has basically told him that he wants to be Yuri's coach forever. I get that these two only talk about their feelings when it's convenient for the plot, but the fact that they're supposed to be engaged, but not really engaged at this point, we'll talk about that later, just goes to show that they have no concept of being able to make a decision together. Hey, Victor, do you really want to be my coach? Yes. But you were staring all fondly out at the ice. I like ice skating, but I like you more. And also, I can ice skate literally whenever I want. Oh. Yeah, that's true. And Yuri bounces back all the time in general. It's not that I expected him to slowly improve with no hiccups, but Yuri can act really inconsistently. Right after he panics about whether or not Victor liked his performance, he's suddenly all, "Victor, I did great, right?" I'm sorry? Then there's another scene where Yuri suddenly flirts with Victor out of nowhere. I presume it's out of nowhere to make it be more of a surprise, but that just makes it cheap since there's no lead up. There are so many moments like that and they constantly threw me off. They do a similar thing earlier in the show, where one of the characters talks about how much of a sin it is for Yuri to keep Victor to himself, but instead of being self-conscious about that, Yuri is totally okay and is confident in proving that he deserves Victor. Victor even thinks to himself that something is different about Yuri, but it's never clear what that actually is. Another example of a scene that never follows up to anything is a thought Victor has as he watches Yuri skate. While watching part of Yuri's routine that's supposed to represent when Victor became Yuri's coach, Victor thinks to himself that Yuri doesn't look very happy about it. This could have gone somewhere. In fact, I would have suggested that for Yuri steadily taking Victor up the metaphorical pedestal, but they don't use it. Even episode 4, where Yuri becomes uncomfortable with Victor after a comment Victor makes, the conflict of Yuri avoiding Victor is just a quick bunch of clips that last for about 30 seconds before Yuri and Victor actually talk about their feelings. Well, more specifically, Yuri talks about some unimportant story about a wounded skater and how his family and friends never treat him as weak, which, while he's technically right, maybe, probably, kinda, they also don't know how to treat him at all. More on that later. Yuri and Victor bond, I suppose, but it never feels like they have a firm point in their relationship where you know exactly where they stand. Sometimes it's a skater and coach relationship, sometimes they seem like casual friends, and sometimes they seem actually affectionate. Which, unfortunately, brings me to my fourth point, the gay aspects of the show. They don't exist. Like, they just don't. Everything in this anime is either innuendo, only heavily implied, or subtext. There are never moments where they explicitly state that they are boyfriends or just plain dating. The kiss is censored, and also something Victor did more because he wanted to surprise Yuri, not out of a romantic moment. The gold rings they wear are passed off as good luck charms, and while Victor acts like they're engaged, it's for a joke, and Yuri adamantly denies that there's anything romantic between them, which doesn't suit Yuri's development of growing more confident if they had actually been engaged. While this might be good for a plot about them being in denial if their relationship was actually consistent, the end of the anime doesn't have them being established as anything. In fact, because of the scene I mentioned earlier, they're tense with each other for a good chunk of the last episode, and the best physical interaction we get is them skating together in the credits! Not only that, but the physical interactions don't mean as much when Victor is so shameless about contact and incredibly casual about romance.
Will you tell me, what is it you want me to be to you? A father figure?
No.
A brother? Or just a friend? So then you're a lover. I'll try my best. No! I'm not very good with people crying. I don't know what to say in this situation. Should I just kiss you or something?
This makes Victor a blatantly obvious tool for gay but not gay stuff to happen, which is the most disappointing thing about this anime. The fan service. Yuri's parents run a hot spring that he and Victor stay at for the first few episodes, Mr. Innuendo's skating routine is centered around sex appeal, and there are many scenes with characters either completely or mostly naked. I could go on and on about how I hate sexualization in gay anime, and really anime in general, but the main point here is that, well, these characters spend more time doing gay things than actually being gay. This is even ignoring the fact that the skating routine Victor picked for Yuri is about sexual love. Rather than these two talking about how in love they are with each other or how much they want to be married, they instead lay on the innuendos. For example, Victor tells Yuri that he knows about the eros, that is, the theme of one of Yuri's programs, sexual love, within him, and even asks if Yuri can show it to him. Yuri later talks about being the man who took Victor from the world, when this is obviously not true literally, since Victor was the one who intruded on Yuri's life. Then, Yuri thinks about being the only one who can satisfy Victor, and the only one who knows Victor's love. He thinks about being able to surpass Victor's wildest imagination. In episode 12, Victor acts all coy about how he's a failure as a coach, then follows up by asking Yuri for suggestions of how he can make up for it, specifically something that would excite him. It got so bad that I started seeing innuendos where there might not be any, like when Yuko tells Victor that she hopes that he'll bring out a side of Yuri that they've never seen before. I think my eyes started hurting from all the squinting I was doing. And despite all that, when given a chance to talk about his love for Victor and why the theme of his program is love in the first place, Yuri merely states that he doesn't have a name for the emotion, but that he's decided to call it love, even going so far as to call his love in general abstract. You know those scenes in anime where two guys or two girls interact in a certain way, and the audience chuckles and comments that it's gay, but not that it's romantic? That's what this feels like. And honestly, to a degree, I see why there aren't more moments with Victor and Yuri that actually flesh out the relationship. I mean, besides being too busy making innuendos. This is a 12-episode show. With all the skating, other characters, fan service, and the barrage of jokes at Yuri's expense, there's no time to get anything else done. Go figure. Oh, and there's also the topic of Yuri's anxiety and self-esteem issues, which... oh boy. So, my fifth and final point is dedicated to Yuri himself and the treatment given to him. Because this is a comedy anime, it's no surprise to anyone that Yuri is the inevitable punching bag of this story. And they do punch him hard. The anime makes it seem as if Yuri is the one at fault for all his issues and that he has to deal with them pretty much on his own. But when it came time to actually bring it up...
You've shown you have the skill to win. Why can't you?
Probably 'cause I don't have a whole lot of confidence.
That's right.
No. Show, you don't get to just bring up Yuri's self-esteem issues, then throw in your gay fan service and expect everyone to drop the subject. Because, really, the show hammers Yuri for his self-esteem only to then not address why he's self-conscious in the first place. Now, let's think about this conundrum ourselves. Why would Yuri be self-conscious?
It doesn't cost you anything to shake hands, does it? Viktor Nikiforov's nice to his fans, and you will be too, you understand me? As for you, what kind of gut are you hiding underneath that bulky coat of yours? All right, off with the clothes!
Wow, you really did get fat, Yuri! You're retiring? You've never had a girl... Hey! Ignore them!
You're fatter than me!
Stop! This isn't funny! I can't just keep copying him. I mean, I'll never get better than him that way.
Wait a sec. You think you can be better than him someday?
Oh, no! Of course not!
Let's get real here. How many dates have you had? You do know he's the hottest skater in the world, right? I wonder how people are gonna react when they see you. Showing up with Victor as your coach, they'll probably think you stole him from the sport.
You'll be hated by millions of skating fans worldwide!
Somebody else will outscore the piggy.
He's really talented, and the program had such flair. It felt so fresh.
You're supposed to be teaching me and not chatting with the piggy!
Yeah. I thought you might be able to get into the hundreds since you weren't under pressure.
Right. You've broken the world record multiple times with scores in the hundreds, so it must be easy.
This is actually an engagement ring. We'll get married when he wins the gold medal. Right, Yuri?
What did you just say? Well, it's not a gold medal, but...
That's nice, but I'm not going to kiss your medal unless it's gold. Sorry. Oh, I was really looking forward to kissing that gold medal. Remember, you're not setting foot in this ring until you drop some weight, little piggy.
Ah, yes, of course! The quickest road to curing a self-conscious stress eater of all of their problems. Yelling at them and mocking them for their weight issues. No one knows how to deal with Yuri and his problems. No one. Instead of getting the support he needs, Yuri is just a target anytime the show decides that they need someone for their next joke. By the way, side note, what's so wrong about pigs that they have to be an insult? What did pigs ever do to these people? On behalf of pigs everywhere, I am offended. And it honestly doesn't even stop there with Yuri's treatment. The reason Yuri had lost in the first episode was not only because of binging on food due to the pressure, but his dog died! Yuri blames himself completely for it, but I thought it was totally understandable for the death of a pet to take a toll on him right before a big competition. And one would think that the fact that Yuri had a dog and Victor has a dog would lead them to relate on some level, but that's not what happens. Instead, the death of Yuri's dog is used for a scene all about Victor and how Victor would feel if his own dog dies. And Victor himself is a huge contributor of reasons why Yuri would feel self-conscious about himself. Victor flies to Japan to be his coach, and Yuri's friend hypes up that Victor was so inspired by Yuri that he went there just to coach him, but then Victor later goes on to talk about coaching fees and how he'll bill Yuri later. One might think it's a one-off joke, but it's so predominant in Yuri's mind that, in a later scene that's not even in the same episode, Yuri messes up a jump during practice while worrying over how expensive it might be. When Yurio's there, Victor talks about how they're both more mediocre than they think and how they both need to be more self-aware. While it makes sense for Yurio, who's overconfident and demands things as if he has a right to say what Victor can choose for him, it makes absolutely no sense to say such a thing to Yuri, who's obviously aware that he's not the best skater in the world. Victor also effectively insults Yuri again by instructing him to practice the basics, saying that he won't teach Yuri anything that Yuri can't do. Apparently missing the point of teaching someone in the first place, which is to show them something they can't do. Yuri ends up having to go to Yurio to learn instead, which obviously isn't what Yurio is supposed to do. But Yuri doesn't have a choice when Victor won't do his dang job! Never mind that the thing to be taught is something Yuri basically already knew. It was simply that he struggled to land it in competition, meaning he just hadn't perfected it. The worst of this is the fact that this scene takes place after a challenge has been made between Yuri and Yurio that Yuri definitely didn't consent to. If Victor is supposed to be attached to Yuri, even slightly, why would he care about Yurio's demands? He's even a flaky character by nature, so it's not like he should care about brushing Yurio off again. Also, Yuri literally just got back into shape as this challenge is made by Victor, and he's given a pathetic week before Victor reveals the program he made for him. Just the shock and sadness in Yuri's face alone is heartbreaking, as Victor has to actually think if he wants to give in to this teenager's temper tantrum. And the list goes on with Victor. In one episode, Yuri dismisses the clearly overzealous fan to try and focus on himself, something I honestly support because it was keeping him calm, but instead of Victor simply talking to Yuri about his thoughts on that choice, Victor gets outright angry and walks out on him, thus ruining the motivation Yuri had. Later, Yuri loses sleep over pressure, thanks to his clueless family and friends who don't know how to deal with him and cheered him on too excessively, then is told by Victor to nap. After Victor falls asleep on him and ruins any sleep Yuri could have had, Victor gets upset at the fact that Yuri hadn't napped at all. Even near the end of the show, after Yuri and Victor had gotten the gold rings to signify their closeness, one would think we'd get to see Victor be angry when Yurio is referring to Yuri as a pig and calling their rings garbage, but there's basically no reaction whatsoever. It would have been so easy to show the contrast of Victor once mocking Yuri to now defending Yuri, but they don't go there. Looking at it that way, it's no wonder why Yuri's supposed power of love didn't win him the gold. I mean, yeah, it's still silly considering that the one who was probably expected to win in show lost because someone looked at him funny. No, really. And Yurio won through the power of teenage rage, but still. Because there is no love between Yuri and Victor. For goodness sake, the first instance we see of Victor being sparkly-eyed and blushy around Yuri is the scene I mentioned a while ago, when Yuri is drunk and begging Victor to be his coach. Particularly sad is that it seems to be implied that Yuri might have had a crush on Yuko, but she ended up marrying some guy who bullied Yuri when they were kids. Now, Yuri's in a relationship with someone he seems to still have on a pedestal, and the few times he's bothered by Victor's behavior, it's brushed off, probably because he's used to being treated this way and is numb to it by this point. Yuri's life sucks, plain and simple. I don't even have a problem with Victor mocking Yuri in the first place, but that never becomes a plot point and is never something that Victor has to apologize for. All the way to the end, Yuri is still a punching bag. Some of his self-esteem issues come from within, but saying that none of his environment is the cause would be laughable if it weren't so sad. I don't even know if this could be salvaged by removing bits and pieces of episodes. Like, maybe you could get 2 hours of content by taking out the fan service and some of the crueler jokes, but saving that ending would be one heck of a challenge. I can only recommend this show to someone who is desperate for gay content with or without substance, and either likes or doesn't mind the figure skating. The figure skating itself is only so-so, regardless of how accurate it may be, and it's not really worth it when the relationship between Yuri and Victor comes off the way it does. If the better comedic scenes and touching moments were put into clips, then I would say that it'd be a good idea to watch those, but I can't recommend the entire product. And now, I'm out. I'm tired. Bye so long, see ya, I guess.